I really hope they got outside. I really, really hope they got outside. Did somebody wake up AJ?
Yeah, they were all ran out.
Okay.
They're gone. I just don't want to spread.
Or something to blow.
How did it start?
Images.
I trust you've been staying safe. Now, I have a question for you. What would you do if someone stole your iPhone or your mobile phone for that matter? I know that most people are attached to their mobile phones, but this true crime story is over the charts with regards to what a 16-year-old boy decided to do to the people whom he thought was responsible for robbing him of his iPhone. Now, the video you saw at the beginning, or the footage you saw at the beginning of this video with a house on fire, is a well-coordinated arson attack perpetrated by this 16-year-old boy at the time, as at the 5th of August 2020, on the people he thought was responsible for robbing him of his iPhone, which turns out he was even using to deal in drugs, allegedly. And in the end, guess what? He was actually wrong about the people he had concluded were responsible for robbing him. In effect, it would end up that he actually unalived a whole family of Senegalese nationals who were residing in the USA out of a mistaken identity based on what investigation he did to conclude that they were responsible. Now, this is what he did because he felt his iPhone was that important to him, and the fact that somebody thought it wise to rob him was something he was not going to take lying down. Now, the name of this guy is Kevin Hui Bui, and he was 16 years old at the time, as at the 5th of August 2020. Now, what Kevin did in his mind was an act of revenge on the people he thought had robbed him of his iPhone. And he didn't do this alone. He actually coordinated this attack with two of his friends. Now, what they did was he used the Find My iPhone app and tried using it to track his stolen phone to whichever location the phone would be at. Now, sorry, I don't know if it is the fault of the app in terms of its level of accuracy, or that he didn't input something correctly, but it will turn out that he actually was led to the wrong home, and they went there in masks with gasoline, and the rest is obvious. Now, per what they did to this house and the people in it on the 5th of August 2020, under the suspicion that the occupants of that house were responsible for stealing his phone, a whole family were unalived as a result. Now, the victims are Jibril Dio, 29 years old, Aja Dio, 23 years old, and that is a husband and a wife, as well as their 22-month-old daughter by name Khadija Dio. Another victim, that's the fourth, was Hassan Dio, who is a 25-year-old mother, and her 7-month-old daughter by name Hawa Bey. All these 5 people were unalived, and the fatalities would have increased, just that 3 other people who were also in the home mastered the courage and were fortunate enough to have a chance to jump through the back window, and unfortunately some of them even suffered broken bones. Now, when this crime first occurred on the 5th of August 2020, the police were baffled, honestly. They were trying so hard to find the perpetrators. But then it wasn't something that was just straightforward. So if you read the 17-page arrest warrant on the day of the fire, it indicates that even the police officers and the fire servicemen who came to the place as at the time that the flames were raging managed to break down one of the houses, but they couldn't even enter because the heat was too much. And it was difficult for them to establish any suspects at the beginning, because if they had gone in, they could have rescued the people, and then they could have also possibly had the chance of picking up certain things that may have sort of pointed them in the right direction. But if you know anything about fires, you know that sometimes or most times they are not predictable. So even when they kicked in the front door, they couldn't enter because of the extreme heat. But then there was a breakthrough in all this, because surveillance footage from the CCTV camera from a neighboring home showed 3 people wearing masks and hoodies. And this was around 2:26 a.m. on the 5th of August 2020. Now, the footage showed that at least one of the suspects was holding what appeared to be a gasoline can. Or let me say a gasoline can, yeah. Now, the police are classifying this as a well-coordinated attack by these 3 people because they were able to enter the home and then they used the gasoline as an accelerant to start this fire behind the home, and then they fled. But as always, you would expect that detectives would try and beat the criminals. That's exactly what happened here, because eventually, they even put out a reward for anyone who could give information to the arrest of these people. I think it was around $40,000 or $14,000 thereabout. That is how determined officers were to actually solve this case, because 5 people had been lost. And eventually, investigations led detectives to obtain a search warrant after asking Google who had searched the home's address. So they actually went and obtained a search warrant to engage Google, for Google to let them know anybody who had Googled the address of the house that had been touched. And this was prior to the fire. So they wanted to know prior to the fire who Googled the home address. And per this, they eventually identified these 3 guys and their friends, Bowie, Sibet, and Seymour. Now, from this point, the detectives reviewed conversations between these 3 guys on social media, including one conversation on the 15th of July 2020, where Bowie told his friends that he was robbed, and another message where he said, I quote, "They are gonna get theirs." Now, "they are gonna get theirs" to me translates as they will get what is coming to them. Fast forward to the 1st of August 2020, Bowie sent Seymour, his friend and eventual co-accomplice, a message on Snapchat saying #possibly ruin our futures and burn his house down. Now, this would sum up what was going to happen on the 5th of August. So, it so happens that it's now been established that on the 5th of August of that same year, 2020, they actually manifested that hashtag and they touched the house, and the rest is history. Now, as at 2024, things are heating up for Kevin Bowie. Under a plea deal that Kevin Bowie has been able to establish or acquire per his lawyers, he is now facing up to 60 years in prison when he is sentenced this summer for his role in the quintuple homicide. Now, it is very unfortunate. He was 16 years, but he chose to go down this path. Somebody would ask, where was the guidance? But I would also say, let's not blame the parents that quickly, because at the age of 16, these teenagers, some of them can be very difficult to handle, such that you can't even blame the parents without much evidence, especially if they don't even know what he's doing. Now, prior to Bowie being possibly sentenced to the 60 years, his friends and accomplices in this homicide, first of all being Dylan Seibert, who was 18 years old, had pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in 2022 and was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile facility, followed by 7 years in state prison. So, he got his. Now, the third co-defendant, that is the third person who was with Bowie and Dylan Seibert, is called Gavin Seymour. He is the other friend. He also pleaded guilty to the same charge in January and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. He was 16 years old when the crime took place, and he also remained incarcerated. Now, his estimated parole release date is November of 2050. So, their hashtag came true. They have actually ruined their futures. So, that leaves the main man, Kevin Bowie, and he is scheduled to possibly face 60 years in prison. Now, this is a sad way to go. First of all, for the family, the victims, because it even turns out that they were not even the ones responsible for stealing that phone. Whatever search Kevin Bowie did, it's led him to the wrong house, and he didn't do any due diligence, and he exacted this action on them, which unalived these 3 adults and 2 young ones. And it is very, very unfortunate. Not that even if it was accurate, it would have made any difference. But the fact that he felt this was the way to go, I just don't get it. And it turns out, allegedly, this is a phone he was also using to deal some illegal substances. So this guy seemed to be just off the chain. He felt he could do certain things. Someone would say that this is an exuberant teenager going through the normal phases of teenage life, but I would disagree, because to decide to take such a gruesome action like this without any knowledge of the people in the house takes a certain level of crazy that I think has nothing to do with teenage tendencies. I think this guy, he sat down with his friends and they probably knew what they were going to do. Even the discussions actually confirm that they had time to plan this. And the police affidavit also speaks to it, that it's a well-coordinated attack by teenagers. So it tells you they are not your average teenagers. Now, RIP to the victims, their families. I hope they have the strength to move on. They have actually come out to say that they are a Muslim community. They believe that Allah will do what he has to do for them. And I tip my hats off to them, but I don't think it's an easy thing to deal with. Even though they've said this, I know and I believe they will still be grieving deeply, because this is a very sad way to go. And especially since they are immigrants, the victims were immigrants, sometimes it sends chills down the spines of other immigrants and makes some of them feel as though they were just targeted with an excuse, or they were targeted by these corporates because they seemed like the easier targets. I don't know. People read meanings into these things in different ways, and it has a lot of repercussions and on the societal dynamics with regards to some of these immigrants and how they are trying to assimilate into the American dream. But it's very unfortunate, and it has brought out another angle where some people seem not to be happy with the sentencing or the proposed sentencing for Kevin Bowie and even some of his colleagues. Some people are trying to put out an argument that what if it was the reverse and the culprit was black and the victims were white? I don't want to get into that because I've done the research on this case. I don't really have much to go with in line with that theory, and I don't want to start speculating. And also, I want to give credence and respect to the rule of law as has been applied, because I believe there are several dynamics to it. I'm sure they will also look at the conspiracy between these three people, the extent of it, who did what, who didn't do what, who went to what extent. There are certain dynamics that will play out through all this. That's how come their sentences are graduated, such that there are varying degrees of it per each culprit. But it's very, very unfortunate. And I think that Kevin Bowie, at a point in his life, would look back when he's older in prison and regrets that day. And this is also testament to the fact that you should choose your friends carefully. These are three guys. Whilst they were conspiring in all this, how come none of them had the common sense to just say that, Charlie, guys, let's drop this, or let's find another solution to this that does not involve us committing a crime? But some way, somehow, all these three guys were able to reach that resolution that this was the best way to go. And they sat down, they planned, they executed it, and the rest is history. So again, what would you do if someone stole your iPhone or your mobile phone for that matter? Leave your comments in the comment section on that. What do you think about this case? What do you think about the arguments that is trying to bring in the issue of race and all, the reverse and what would have happened? Let's have a conversation on this. If you also haven't subscribed, guys, please do me this favor. I put in so much work to bring this content. I just need you to help the channel by subscribing, liking the video, leaving a comment and sharing our content. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you on the next one.